Dylan Edwards scored 4 touchdowns in game 1 last year. He's got 2 in game 1 this year. So week 1 has been pretty nice to Dylan Edwards over the course of his college career so far. But he brought some extra juice, and they really needed it at times. And even the first play of the game, they scripted out the first offensive play to just try to get the ball to him in space. So it's clear that they understand what a valuable asset he can be.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into another edition of 3Ma. I am John Kurtz. Derek Young and I are with you today to recap K-State's Week 1 victory over UT Martin. We didn't quite get 69-0. All right, it wasn't as disrespectful as perhaps I would have preferred, but K-State does get very close to covering, very, very close in the end. Even on a day when the offense struggled a bit, the defense really carried the day. We will talk all about that here on the show, which is brought to you by our friends at Holiday Distillery. I'm sure there was a lot of Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon that was out there at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. If you were not one of the tailgates that had it, you've got a couple of weeks now to stock up before Arizona. Remember, that game is on a Friday, all right? But listen, Holiday, as we record today, you've got plenty of time to get out and get Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon and 360 vodka to make sure that you have the best tailgate out at Bill Snyder Family Stadium when the Arizona Wildcats come to town. We appreciate Holiday Distillery, great K-State people who support our podcast. So thank you to them for their help and support as always. Okay, DY, K-State wins. It was not always incredibly pretty on the offensive side of the ball, but I do feel like that's about what we expected coming into the game. We said the defense would probably be ahead of the offense when you have a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback coach / offensive coordinator. You're working in helmet communication for the first time, and you have a sophomore starting quarterback making just his second career start. A lot of kinks that clearly have to be worked out there, but man, the defense was pretty lights out. They gave up points after a fumbled kickoff return and after an interception. Other than that, I mean, they were pretty much completely lights out.
Yeah, in addition to all those offensive pieces being new, there's other ones new, right? You kind of have a retooled starting offensive line, a new toy, Dylan Edwards, some receivers that don't have a lot of experience in the Kansas State offense. So they're interjecting a lot of new pieces at once from personnel standpoint, a little bit from a schematic standpoint, because it's not going to be the same thing from a coaching standpoint and from an operational standpoint, as you said, because of the in-helmet communication angle now being injected into all of this as well. About what we expected, like you said, we thought that the defense would be ahead of the offense early on in the season and kind of have to carry the way, and it did. There were times when the offense was probably a little bit more sluggish than I would have liked to have seen, even knowing that they were going to have some growing pains. And they didn't really get into a groove until midway through the third quarter, it felt like. But to get to that point, to kind of fight through that adversity and to find that groove eventually, I thought that was a good thing. And, these are kind of why you play these games a little bit, especially with the way the roster is composed this year, is that you can kind of sift through those, hurdles while still winning comfortably. If you have played a worthy week 1 opponent, it might not have gone as well, but the approach might have looked different too, right? I've said this a few times, and I know you were sitting up there in a press box with me too, and you were on page. Like, if Kansas State wanted to, they could have put together a game plan and called a game where they would have scored 70 points. Like, they could have done that. It would have involved running the crap out of the football, right? But obviously they wanted to get better at other elements, so they used this as kind of like a preseason type game. And that's why it wasn't always pretty on offense. But this defense is as good as we thought it would be, maybe a little bit better in some areas. And the special teams took a step forward but wasn't perfect.
Yeah, mixed bag special teams, but much more good than bad, I would say. And we'll definitely make some space for that later on in the show. Yeah, I mean, the defense, man, they're going to be our top storyline today, which, of course, is brought to you by our friends at Alenco. If you have any home improvement needs, make sure you get in touch with our friends at Alenco. They are great K-State people who just want to support K-State podcast here, but the defense, I mean, they held UT Martin to 36 yards rushing on 38 carries, only 98 yards passing. There's really like one play and it was a play where Toby Osensami had a sack within his grasp and let it slip away, and that in turn became a long bomb down the field for UT Martin. It was really the only highlight offensively for UT Martin the entire day. And there were guys like Des Purnell running around making plays. I mentioned Toby Osensami. I mean, just guys that were really flashing all over the place. Nikendre Steiger had a couple of really nice, impressive plays too, and got singled out by Chris Kleiman in the postgame press conference. It looked fast, athletic, suffocating. They really gave no room for UT Martin to do anything.
Very fast. They played fast anyway. And I thought, quite frankly, and it probably wasn't even close, that Desmond Purnell was the best player on that football field throughout the night, offense or defense, to be quite honest. I thought he was that good. That is an all Big 12 linebacker, if that's the kind of performance that can be expected of it. And I thought that it wasn't necessarily connected or associated with the caliber of play on the other side. I just thought Desmond Purnell was that good and would have been that good regardless of who the opponent was. So that's why I kind of want to put that forward. I thought Damian Ilalio was really good. That line of scrimmage didn't move. When the other team is going 38 carries for 36 rushing yards, which is an absurd number, that usually means the defensive tackle is cooking, and he was. The sacks help. Toby Osensami, it's kind of wild, right? If he doesn't lose that one sack, they don't get the one bust and make a big play. But he also has 2.5 sacks on the night and 6 pressures on 11 snaps. So
ridiculous number, yeah.
So the pressure rate is absurd. So he was really good, and I thought, he getting overshadowed a bit because of Toby's ridiculous pass rush rate versus the amount of snaps that he had was Brendan Mott. Just a complete game. He was a stud in the run game. Also was a force in the pass rush as well. I thought he was really good. And then if you're going to talk about those young guns that you're hoping kind of surge to the top and make some splashes, we were talking about they need one or two of those guys to end up being a real deal, maybe sooner rather than later. I thought we saw some really good moments from Ryan Davis.
Yeah, Ryan Davis got a lot of run there and got a chance to play a ton of those guys. Our top storyline, as we mentioned, brought to you by our friends at Alinco, local company based out of Kansas City, owned by K-Staters and locally owned since 1986 in an industry where most have been bought out by national companies. So if you need new windows or a bathroom remodel, they have premium window replacements, Kohler Luxstone shower systems. They can do new siding on your home. You don't need to be in Kansas City or Manhattan. They'll go to Western Missouri, Northeast Kansas, the entire KC Metro, Manhattan, Emporia, Topeka, Wichita, Rossville. They've got you covered anywhere there. Go to alincohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com to check out their services, including free estimates. And you can also call Sam at 913-961-2165. Yeah, a lot of good there. And one of the things that I want to single out here is what they did in the run game, because we talked about it on our defensive preview. Like, the overall defensive numbers were pretty good. It was a pretty salty unit last year. But if there was an area they struggled, it was against the run at times. And so I understand it's UT Martin. I disrespected the living hell out of them on the initial show. But I don't know that you could have had a more impressive debut, basically, than what K-State was able to do there, which is very positive, especially also as they are nursing some injuries in the linebacking core too, and that didn't seem to bother anything at all.
Yeah, and like you said, it is UT Martin. What's the alternative? Like, are you saying if you can't credit them for doing that against UT Martin, then you can't credit them at all, and that's not really fair. They were really good against the run, and obviously that's a giant step forward from what we saw a year ago. They did give up that big explosive when Toby Osensami didn't get the quarterback to the ground. And I thought there was one other pass play, really good throw by the quarterback. That could have been an explosive as well if it was hauled in by the receiver. So it was a really good day from the defense. There's some minor things there to clean up, maybe to prevent some of the explosiveness, because they got one, and I thought they could have got one or two others.
What'd you think of Toby Osensami's sack celebration? So everybody wanted to.
Funny. It's funny. You know what the best part is? at least on the one. I don't know if it unfolded this way on the other. It's like, it almost looks like when he gets tapped, like he snaps out of it, like when Uso slapped him on the helmet, and then it was like, poof, I'm back. So I like that part, actually.
And just a bizarre story. I saw somebody describe it as the controller getting unplugged celebration, and I was like, well, that's pretty good. And I was like, maybe that's what he's going for. But no, post-game told us all that it was a guy that he saw on Bourbon Street in New Orleans a couple years ago at the Sugar Bowl that just like was standing there frozen like that, and he thought it was funny. And so it was basically like a team inside joke that got brought out there as his sack celebration, which we got to see quite frequently because he was living in the backfield.
And Ryan Davis did it too. I don't know if he just didn't have his own, so he did Toby's. But there's a picture that I used. I think it's from USA Today. It was Ryan Davis in that celebration pose.
Oh, I don't know that I even caught that during the game.
Yeah,
that Ryan Davis did that too. Okay, all right. Well, we'll have that to look forward to. You know, Felix had his signature sack celebration. I guess Toby now has his.
Brendan Mott has the Conor McGregor one.
He has the Conor McGregor walk, yeah. And I did see somebody had tweeted about that, and then Conor McGregor actually liked the tweet. So apparently Brendan Mott has reached all the way up to Conor McGregor after his sack celebration.
Come to the game in Ireland, Conor McGregor.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, he could try and hawk whatever that whiskey that he's selling. You know, that might work. I'm sure it's no Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon, but he can try. We had the conversation about defensive ends and who's going to lead the team in sacks. I mean, it looks like Toby is so dynamic. I know he's only coming in on pass rush downs. Basically, we looked at each other at one point and we're like, "Hey, is this the first time he's been in on like a second down in the game?" So it's one role. It's like go get the quarterback. But man, I mean, it's just he just looks different. Like he looks on a different level than everybody else when he's out there getting after it. Like you said, it's very solid, and he got one of those kind of trademark Brendan Mott, like just hustle your ass off sacks. But Toby will just get there in a split second every time he's going there. It seems like that's the obvious pick here, right? I know that's week one. I don't want to overreact too much to it, but he definitely looks like he's on a different level athletically.
That was the case in week one. Where I'm pumping the brakes a little bit is that I want to see what that translates against when he's playing opponents that he's not always going to be significantly bigger, faster, stronger than. Because the reason why I picked Toby Osunsami as my defensive MVP going into that game, so I got that right. Well, unless you want to go Des Purnell, obviously, is that like this is the kind of game where someone that's a little bit of an athletic freak like him, where they have the biggest advantage. That kind of goes away when you're playing other teams, maybe even playing this week. So not saying he won't still be that guy, but then it comes down to when you start to play these other teams that are similarly talented, you have to have pass rushing moves, and we'll see if that's in his arsenal moving forward.
Okay, that's good. So Cole left, and I guess I had to be the guy to play the role of over-the-top homer, you know?
I mean,
20 sacks this year.
Yeah, keep that rate. They give him 1.5, I think. Yep.
Okay, 1.5 officially for Toby during the game. I also do want to, before we leave the defense, I want to single out Damian Ilalio because you did bring him up and thought that he was really impressive upon further review of the game. And I think most people would have assumed Uso would just be the guy to start again this year. That was not the case. Like clearly they love what Damian Ilalio is bringing to the table there. And I think the early returns are very, very good, man. There was a play I can remember where he was even moving like kind of sideline to sideline, getting over there and hustling toward the boundary to make a play. K-State has had a long tradition of guys who were, the Will Geary type of defensive tackle, who's a little bit undersized, really good wrestler, who winds up way overperforming at the Big 12 level. And it looks like Ilalio may be next in line there.
Yeah, I could tell why he kind of got the starting nod despite Uso kind of being that returning starter. That line of scrimmage did not move. He is one of the main leaders on the defense too. You could tell he commands a lot of respect from his coaches and teammates by the way that he kind of conducts himself and holds people accountable. So I think just his role from a leadership standpoint has allowed him to kind of rise up the ladder as well. But even his play, like I said, the line of scrimmage did not move it in probably his best play of the night. Remember, he's like a near 300-pound defensive tackle, and he runs down a player from behind and makes the tackle. I mean, you know, 5'11" or not, 6'5", 350, whatever it may be, play the interior of the defensive line, and you run a play down from behind and make the tackle. That's pretty impressive. It's an impressive feat, and shows that you're working your ass off too.
Yep. I mean, that's been the reputation of him all the way back to the days at Manhattan High when he really shined in the Centennial League, and it's been cool to watch his rise.
He's just a football player. Like, even when he was with Manhattan High, we're all looking at him. We're like, man, he's so good. You wonder a little bit about his prospects because of the size stuff, and he just keeps producing and contributing and being productive regardless of that. It's like, I mean, we don't know how he's doing it, but he's getting it done, so why not just keep letting him go? I mean, I think that's why in high school you were like, should we offer? But he's so productive, you got to take that chance. Now, we're sitting here and he's in college football. We're like, should he be a starter? I mean, he just gets it done. Maybe it's not traditional, but he just gets it done. His wrestling background probably helps a lot.
Well, another thing that he said he came into the interview room post-game, and one of the things that he said that was really interesting, he was breaking down kind of the difference between he and Uso, and he was like, look, I just have way more time playing the game than Uso does because he didn't pick it up until later in life, whereas I've been playing football for a long time. And then I came here and I was learning under the guys that were already here, and I had some really good teachers to get me up to speed. Very humble in terms of guys who are helping show him the way, but also pointing out something obvious. Like he's just had more time. He's probably a more savvy defensive tackle, has to be because of his size, but also just because of how long he's been playing the game. So he has a bit of an edge over Uso there.
I'm glad he brought that interview too, because it was a good one, and it also allowed me to kind of know how he thinks the game. I think he's a thinker. Like for a defensive tackle, he came off very, very cerebral.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's why, guys are going to tend to gravitate towards him, and you're going to have some leadership capabilities for him there on the defensive line. So that was really encouraging. Again, you said at UT Martin, there are going to be bigger offensive lines that they face, quite obviously, but encouraging stuff in week one from the defense all the way around. Our friends at Home Field Apparel are ready to make sure that you will be the best dressed at Bill Snyder Family Stadium come a couple Fridays from now when Arizona is in town. They've got 50-plus K-State designs out there, including this baseball kind of ringer tee that I am wearing right now, which I enjoy very much. But all sorts of old school gear for football, basketball. They'll get you ready to go. It is the most popular college gear around. DY apparently was proud of Texas Tech's defensive performance on Saturday and is wearing his Wreckham Masked Raider shirt right now, so you can get 100-plus other teams like Texas Tech if you would like to. Big win for the Red Raiders in overtime over Abilene Christian on Saturday, so I'm glad that we have that well represented here on the show today. You can even get 15% off your first order. Just go to homefieldapparel.com and enter promo code 3MA24. That is promo code 3MA24 at homefieldapparel.com to get 15% off your first order. And we're back to talk about the offense next.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
When you discover a new binge-worthy show or a song that you play on repeat and you just have to share it with your friends so they can experience just how awesome it is too? Well, that's how we felt when we discovered that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. It's such an awesome deal, there's no way we could keep it to ourselves. Friends don't let friends overpay for wireless. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan and switch to Mint Mobile. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your own phone number and bring along all your friends. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/3MA. That's mintmobile.com/3MA. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/3ma. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
A quick note to all of our podcast listeners out there. If you'd like an extra $500, who wouldn't? Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and in turn help this show. It's bluewirepods.com/survey where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. bluewirepods.com/survey. The link is also in the show notes of this episode. And if you would like to get in touch with us, you guys know that there is a way to do that outside of, again, patreon.com/3ma. If you'd like to join our Discord, patreon.com/3ma, you can do that and communicate with us regularly. But if you're not going to do that, you can also hit up the KCSN hotline powered by Mint Mobile. That's 913-407-6524, 913-407-6524, the KCSN hotline powered by Mint Mobile. I don't believe that we have anything, at least that I have been shown. But if you have thoughts on week one and you want to share them and get them on the show, you can do it that way. So we appreciate those of you who do. Offensively, look, they scored 41 points in the game. 7 of that came from special teams when you get the blocked punt for a touchdown in the first half, which was nice because that would have been a little bit more antsy at halftime if you didn't have that non-offensive score to go with what was happening there.
It's true. Yeah.
Offense got more comfortable in the second half for sure.
Woke up.
I think a part of it, that first drive in the third quarter, they called an actual designed run play, like a read option for Avery. He got out and ran a couple of times, and you saw like almost immediately, like, oh, okay, well, if they really wanted to, and they were doing that the entire game, like obviously the offense would be in a better place, but you're, one, not trying to get a bunch of hits on Avery Johnson in the UT Martin game, but 2, look, you're going to need the passing game. You're going to need the downfield passing game, and this is a chance to work on it. You're going to have to do that. So fairly vanilla, I think, in terms of what they were doing. They were neutralizing one of the best assets they have, which are Avery Johnson's legs, but I understand the frustration. Like, look, they're going to have to pass the football better than what happened consistently on Saturday. There's no doubt about that, and there are some kinks that are going to have to be worked out, I think, for Avery Johnson and company. I'm not over the top alarmed, but it's also fair to call Saturday what it was. It was a little sluggish for the offense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What I would say is, like, I'm not like really concerned. I'm not really panicking. I'm going to be mindful moving forward. I think I'm stealing that from what Fan and Mason kind of said on their Sunday show over at KSO, obviously, as well. Look, Avery, I thought, locked on to guys a little too much sometimes, and because of that, he didn't get to his next reads quick enough, or he just missed open dudes altogether. Was it rust? I don't, we could call it rust, you can call it nerves, you can call it whatever you want, but those things happen. There was a few inaccurate balls as well. But, like we've said, also, if they wanted to, he could have ran for 700 yards and they could have scored 70 points. So going forward, what I would say about that is not concerned, not panicked. The run game will help. His legs being utilized will help the passing game. But the other stuff that I just mentioned do have to get cleaned up, right? You do have to get through your reads a little quicker. You do have to be a little bit more composed and deliver some better balls. And not miss guys as well. And so I'm not someone that's going to put it all on the receivers, because I think Avery had some accountability in this, as I just said, but the receivers have to be better. We saw a few good things from Jace Brown, a few bad things from Jace Brown, going the wrong direction a few times, the fumble and the kickoff. Trey Spivey, when he got in, I thought made an impact as well. You could tell he has a connection and a rapport with Avery Johnson as well. Keegan Johnson, not really, apparent on the field, kind of disappeared again. Jaden Jackson, same thing, outside of a few carries. Dante Cephas did get some targets, but he just didn't seem to have that connection down with Avery Johnson. One ball that Avery looked like he rushed in there was a little inaccurate, and another one where Cephas and him, for some reason, aren't on the same page right there on the throw into the end zone. So I think it's a little bit on the receivers. I think it's a little bit on Avery. Maybe it's rust and nerves, but it's got to get cleaned up. Avery's legs will help it, but it's not going to be like 100% antidote. They got to be better executors as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the stat line, 14 of 21, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, it's not like a disastrous stat line by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, a lot of things that were missed. And I think, I got the question a lot. At least we were getting in the Discord. And again, patreon.com/3law to sign up there. But looking at the game thread there, a lot of people were like asking, like, all right, like, are the receivers not getting open? Like, what's the actual problem here? And I thought from the press box in particular on a couple of drives, which drive was it where they were kind of in the red zone? I mean, it felt like there were a couple plays back to back where receivers and tight ends were popping open, and Avery was just really locked in on. There was a pass that he threw to the sideline toward TJ Giddens out of the backfield, where it looked like there were multiple receivers about to pop open in the end zone.
And Oakley.
Yeah. And he just had zeroed in on one target there. So which to me is a better problem to have. If it were, again, the receivers just not getting open, I start to be pretty worried about this receiver room. I don't think it was as much that as, again, to my untrained eye, there were definitely moments where it appeared that Avery just wasn't getting through his reads.
There were times where guys weren't open. There were times where Avery didn't get through the reads, or he just a little hesitant to unload the ball too. Yeah. But there were times where the receivers could have been better, for sure. But it's not one of those games in the past where we're like, man, these receivers are just not good enough to get the job done. It didn't feel like that. So that's why I would say that. But they do have to be better than they were, if that makes sense. That's how I would do it. If you're going to be a little concerned, or if you wanted the ammunition to hit the panic button, you would say all this happened when the pass protection was pretty much flawless too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty much clean pocket after clean pocket. Even Avery Johnson admitted after the game, I was not really under any duress all game. And that's a bright point too. Like this offensive line, we had questions about it, right? No sacks, pretty much clean pockets all game, and 9 yards a carry.
Offensive line had a great day, and I do definitely want to talk about them. They deserve to be singled out for that. One last point I was going to make on the passing game. I will say I thought one of the low-key biggest plays of the game was the deep ball that Avery threw, which was a decent pass, but he did have just a tiny bit too much on it. Probably should be a touchdown there if you're throwing it completely accurately, but it was good enough. But Jace Brown had to lay out and make the catch. And I know some said, like, hey, looking at the replay, it was pretty close. They didn't actually go look at it. Perhaps K-State gets away with one there. But making the catch, that was really big, because at that point, that was kind of when the offense had been going through some struggles, and particularly in the passing game, and there hadn't been any deep shot available all night. You pop one, Jace beats his guy, he's open there. He needed to make that catch, I think, just for the confidence of everybody there, and it was a bit of an exhale, the fact that he did make that catch. So I thought that was a pretty big low-key play in the game.
Yeah, it was. That had to get done. And again, like Avery, you're an eyelash away from overthrowing that one to Jace as well. And, upon further review, there's probably not a catch too, right? So there's that as well. The Jace Brown one. So, I mean, that's how I kind of go into it. But you do come out of it also thinking, boy, there's a lot more here. We can tell with what they want to do with Dylan Edwards. They can make this thing really pop as well. And I thought a low-key observation, at least that I kind of made too. And I'm not saying Braden Lofton is better than Garrett Oakley, but it was clear that Braden Lofton was the tight end that really popped. And I guess I would say the hype that we started to hear just a little bit, like a touch before the season, it might be real. He looked really good. He was more engaged and involved than Oakley in the passing game for whatever reason, and it didn't look like their skill sets are that widely different.
No, that's what I was going to say. I mean, he looked like he moves pretty well. I mean, it didn't seem like there was a huge drop-off there in terms of athleticism, and obviously had that first touchdown grab, which was nice. There were a couple plays where they just schemed guys wide open. Braden Lofton was one, Dylan Edwards was another down on the goal line. So kudos to Connor Riley and Matt Wells, the guys that are running the offense, because they did a tremendous job with that and just getting guys open. And Dylan Edwards, I mean, that's a great point to bring up here. Guy gets involved with 2 touchdowns, which was really encouraging to see. Drew Galloway made a great point. It's like Dylan Edwards scored 4 touchdowns in game 1 last year. He's got 2 in game 1 this year. So week 1 has been pretty nice to Dylan Edwards over the course of his college career so far. But he brought some extra juice, and they really needed it at times. And even the first play of the game, they scripted out the first offensive play to just try to get the ball to him in space. So it's clear that they understand what a valuable asset he can be. And cool to hear him talk after the game, both he and Chris Kleiman, about just some of the more sentimental side of this. Growing up, a guy whose dad played at K-State, and as a K-State fan, to be out there and have that kind of an impact, what it meant to him. But what it means to the offense is you do have another level that you can really get to there. UT Martin did a good job of not letting him bust a gigantic one, but he still made an impact when he had the ball. That's
what I will say too. And people are going to roll their eyes because they don't want excuses. And this is not meant to be that, but it was hard to get excuse me, Kansas State got those, it felt like 15 to 20 yard chunks when they needed to. And it felt like some of those would have normally gone more than that. But UT Martin was just so well coached in the way that they tackled, just like that, they didn't let things slip away from them. So credit to them. Obviously, they're athletically disadvantaged there, but they just played disciplined football and were fundamentally sound to keep some of those from really busting, like the feud of Dylan Edwards. I will say, you could just tell, both by maybe snap count and just what else was bubbling there, that they still had that foot on the brakes, even with Dylan Edwards, it felt like too.
Well, the backfield in general, came away looking really impressive. DJ Giddens was DJ Giddens. I don't want to bypass talking about him, which it feels like a lot of times he can be sort of this forgotten man. It's just he's
so consistent.
Yeah, he was consistent. He did what he does. He broke off a couple of long ones. He had a 48-yard run, was generally solid. He's always, it just seems like if there's a play where there's not much there, he's always turning it into a 4-yard gain. He will just find a way to get a crafty couple of yards to keep it from feeling as negative a play as perhaps it should be based on what's being blocked up there. You saw that a couple of times.
Go ahead. Okay. I would just say we're, I guess, quote unquote, between the tackle runner, he gets more yards than blocked for quite a bit. And that's not common for a between the tackles guy, because you basically have to run through dudes, or because you're running into contact a lot. But what also helps with him, even when he does bounce outside, he's not the fastest running back in the world. I don't think anyone would confuse him for that. He's plenty quick enough, but it's his pacing. He's just, we talked about how Damian Leo's savvy. I think DJ Giddens is kind of savvy. Just watching him, he changes his speeds up. The hesitation, the stutters, it's like a point guard when they they don't have to go 100% fast all the time. Sometimes Allen Iverson was, where he'd just change up his speed, so you didn't know, the defense is just on skates. It feels like that's what happens with DJ Giddens. His stop and start just on a lot of different runs is just interesting to watch. He's a different type of runner, and it's hard for defenders to prepare for him because of that.
Well, I'll throw this out there because I heard Amon Green say this briefly on the broadcast, but he mentioned Le'Veon Bell in terms of stylistically what DJ Giddens is kind of like as a running back. And I was like, that actually makes sense. He was a guy that was good at kind of shifting.
Yeah, he's not a traditional running back, a little unorthodox, and Le'Veon Bell was pretty unorthodox.
Yeah, actually, I liked that comp when I heard it. Look, that's very lofty, but
yeah,
just in terms of the style, I did think that.
I don't think he has the same short area quicks, but yeah.
Right. If you're Brian Anderson, you got to be pretty happy with the rest of the backfield. And again, the offensive line is paving the way for all this. 283 yards, 9.1 yards per carry. But the twos came in and went right down the field. We were looking at each other damn, this is about the best drive of the day. Jacob Knuth got the nod first at quarterback before Taquan Roberson took the next series, but they were handed the ball off to Joe Jackson, and he got a couple of carries early on last year, and I remember saying to you guys, I was like, man, just didn't see much that jumped out at me. Could not have been more different with how he looked on Saturday. He had 7 carries for 48 yards and showed some real burst. I was highly encouraged seeing what Joe Jackson looked like.
He's another one of those running backs too. Like when you can tell when he's running really hard, he's like flails his arms a little bit. It's kind of what it looked like. He's probably faster than this guy, but I was like kind of like Isaiah Pacheco, the way he was just flailing and chucking his arms.
Got a little bit of that. James White also had a touchdown run from 12 yards out where he made a pretty nice cut there. So, it feels like the backfield is in really good shape, and we got to see them utilize a bunch of those different weapons. So they're going to have a lot of assets to utilize there. Upon rewatch, obviously the numbers stand out for the offensive line DY. I say this all the time. Like, I feel like it's crazy to have media people like voting on an all Big 12 offensive line because not enough of us know like what the hell we're actually looking at or take the time to actually parse through what's going on an offensive line. But you will really dig into it. And after your rewatch, what'd you think of the O-line?
I thought they were better at pass blocking than run blocking. But the run blocking was not horrid, but they need to take some steps forward there. I thought the best ones to me, and I will say like offensive line evals are not really perfect. Like what one person sees is not what another person will see, but I did just converse, recently with someone that does know offensive line play, and his thoughts were essentially in line with me that the best ones were Andrew Langang and the offensive tackles, Carver Willis and Easton Kilty. I thought those 3 were the best and most consistent. I thought the offensive tackles especially were excellent in pass protection. Carver Willis, I think that first drive, you could tell he had to find himself a little bit, but once he did, he was good. Easton Kilty was great in pass protection. Like I said, he's one of those that maybe run blocking needs to clean up a little bit. The most complete performance probably came from Andrew Langang, I thought. Sam Hecht was actually pretty solid at center. I was left wanting a little bit more from Hadley Panzer and Taylor Portier, to be honest.
Okay, but all told, I mean, I will take that effort for a new group out there on the offensive line as they gear up for now Tulane, which will be an interesting test. I'm sure we'll peek ahead toward in just a moment, but let's not forget special teams. Special teams get you a touchdown, which was great to see on the block punt. Ty Bowman gets a block punt. Was it Colby McAllister that ran it in?
Yep.
Okay. Block punt from Ty Bowman. Colby McAllister runs it in. And then, man, I tell you what, Chris Tennant, great debut. He knocks in a couple of field goals, hits one from 45 yards. He was 5 of 5 on extra points. That was great to see. And then Simon McClannon, who was handling the punting job, had a couple inside the 20, had a 46-yarder, averaged 41 yards a punt. That was all good. Now, yes, you did have Jace Brown fumble a kickoff return, which set up some points to begin the second half for UT Martin. That's not great. There was a kickoff out of bounds. You don't love seeing that. So it was not perfect, but I think the highs there were so high because there, at least to me, had been some concern about what are you going to get out of Chris Tennant this year and the punter. And you also obviously score a touchdown. So there's a lot of good there.
Yeah. Well, I've been, kind of on an island of not being too worried about Chris Tennant, just because if he takes a similar jump as he did from year 1 to year 2, then you're going to have a really good year out of your kicker, and that's what I expect. His kickoff out of bounds, you don't love seeing that. What I will say is that's also that was one where it's an eyelash away from being a really good kickoff.
It was close.
And you probably got a unfortuitous bounce. If taking those, I'm not going to really quibble too hard about that kickoff because it is what it is. And you kind of like to maybe take those chances when you're playing UT Martin, kind of like a practice of his own too. So it didn't really bother me too much. There was a punt that Dylan Edwards needs to go get. And that one, is probably more concerning, and it's not concerning moving forward. He's just got to know to do that next time. But that was more problematic, I think, than the Tennant kickoff, just because That's more yards of field position than the 10-1. The 10-1, you're probably losing 10 yards of field position. The Edwards one, you lost 15 to 20 with the way that thing rolled. So that can happen. Jace Brown kickoff return fumble, that can happen, especially coming out of a kickoff. You defer for a reason. That's like, out of all the kickoffs to fumble and cough up, that's the bad one, because you lose your deferment basically by doing so. So that's trouble going forward. They're probably eventually going to tighten up the kick and punt returner rotations and not really do rotations and just find a guy. I would just find a guy now. I would go Dylan Edwards and Sterling Lockett on kickoffs. No, if it's the Jace, you fumble, right? And I never really thought of him as maybe a kick returner guy either. So there's also that. And you mentioned it, and I probably haven't been putting enough attention on it. You're breaking in a new punter, and I thought he had a really strong first day, Simon McClan.
It'd be interesting to see what they do moving forward on that in terms of the rotation and who is actually returning kicks.
Yeah.
I mean, Dylan Edwards is just such a unique weapon.
You have to have him back there.
I would prefer that they get him as many touches as possible. Now, Sterling Lockett did have he had a nice return.
Punt return. Yeah.
Picked up a chunky yardage and looked pretty good. I mean, you and I were talking about the book on him is that he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he didn't look overly slow to be out there.
Yeah, and he's probably quicker than fast, so maybe even short area speed's a little bit more than, long speed there. And he's so decisive that it makes it look faster too.
Yeah, just looked very competent out there when he was on the field. So I thought that was a good sign. So I think, like I said, I will take what we got out of the special teams unit. So I mean, all told, I don't know. What would you say? This was like a B-, C+ kind of effort from the team?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I tend to lean more positive, and because I'm not panicking over some of the things that didn't go right. But if you're going to just judge it on itself, what this team is capable of and what they should be doing, maybe even a little bit lower, but nothing really scares me going forward.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. They're what was the first? The Circa, I think, had K-State at like -8, -8.5.
I think the first thing I saw was DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever. I don't know if we have a betting sponsor, but I think I saw 10.
There were a couple differences there. Like Kansas was like a 3-point favorite at Illinois from Circa, and then like 5 or 6 I saw to the other places. So I don't know. There's an interesting difference there, but somewhere between 8 to 10-point favorite going to Tulane this weekend. Early thoughts, look ahead thoughts on the game on the road at Tulane.
I'm still not worried about that game, and maybe people think I should. One, I think Kansas State's going to take a step forward, right? They're going to clean some stuff up. They're going to actually run a normal script and game plan to beat a team rather than a preseason one to just get work in. I think that will make a large difference. I'm still, I guess, feeling good about Tulane having a redshirt freshman starting quarterback. That makes me feel good as well. So I and a new coach, like I'm not scared about this game. I think something I wanted to do with you too, and maybe just so everyone sees totally what we were thinking. Like, one thing that you're most happy about moving forward, and one thing that you're most concerned about moving forward, on each side of the ball. I know defensively, when it comes to me, like, my concern right now would be a little bit about the linebacker health, like needing to get Austin Moore right, needing to get Asa Newsome available. Those two things, especially when you're obviously don't know if you're going to get anything out of Alec Marenko, then it's starting to pile up a little bit for me at linebacker. Once again, a little bit like last year. What I'm most excited about might be, like, pass rush. I'm kind of like, I want to see it against the team that's worthy first before I get gung-ho about it. So maybe if I'm most excited about something or defensively, it's Desmond Purnell.
I mean, it's hard to go against either one of those picks. I think the obvious for the defense is linebacker health and depth and what's going on there. It seemed like Austin Moore basically didn't play the second half, which, I'm sure is about trying to get him right, not give him too much work right now. Positive. look, if I'm going to go somewhere other than Desmond Purnell, it's just in general, I think, like the pass defense. The defensive backs were great. We saw a guy like Nikendre Steiger, who's, even a little bit further down the list of guys that we talk about defensively, flash a couple of times in the game. And then the pass rush, with what Toby is bringing to the table, it looks like there could be some pretty high ceiling available to the pass rush right now. So I definitely feel that way defensively. I mean, offensively, I think it's the running game in total, how good the backfield looked combined with early returns on the offensive line, even if, as you say, it wasn't perhaps as good in the run game as it was in the pass blocking that they were doing. And then the obvious is just, look, Avery Johnson's got all the talent. The arm talent is there. We saw some really positive things in terms of just scheme, being able to get guys wide open for him. But he's going to have to get through reads better and throw the football better for this team to get to where they want to go. So I think that's, to me, the obvious knock right now, or the biggest concern, even if I don't want to make it out to be that it's a massive concern for me. But it is definitely a concern coming out of week one.
Offensively, the good for me would be how encouraged I feel about the offensive line. And this is a little bit me being selfish because of what I thought of him before the season as a recruiting prospect and what I thought of his performance on Saturday. I kind of hope they get the Angel Line Gang somehow into the starting lineup. I think that's something that probably needs to happen at some point, and I hope it doesn't take too long. And then in terms of what's bothering me a little bit is it's a little bit of everything. A little bit of Avery, a little bit of the receivers, so the passing game in general, kind of like you. And really, I don't want Keegan Johnson to just be non-existent in a football game. He's plenty capable. I don't think the hype is fraudulent. I just think it needs to go out there and do it.
Yeah, I felt like they were rotating a lot, right? I mean, they were rotating a lot of guys in a receiver, but there was a point where I was just like, I just feel like I haven't, it was kind of an invisible game. I didn't really feel like I was seeing him out there much. He had one catch for 6 yards.
And I think it was like one of those jet things because I thought it was a carry. But
that's what I was going to say. I don't even remember the catch exactly. So, it was a game that was...
He was open a few times that Avery didn't see him. I will say that.
Okay. It was a game that felt a lot like some of the games last year. So they got to find a way to get him going, man. I mean, they really, really, really do. So however you can scheme that up, if it's something short to him and just get the ball in his hands, they need to unlock that part of the offense, no doubt. Big 12 wise, I came away from the week in the league feeling like, man, Oklahoma State and Utah were probably the two most impressive teams there, which is, I mean, that was my Big 12 championship game coming into the year. I don't feel like much would move me off of that based on what we saw in week one. And then at the bottom of the league, obviously Houston, I think, had the worst performance of anybody, just getting drubbed by UNLV. They've got a long, long way to go. Some of the rest of the bottom of the league actually had pretty encouraging debuts. I mean, Brendan Sorsby was really good for Cincinnati. Jake Retzloff was really good for BYU. Baylor wiped the floor with Tarleton State. I mean, some of these teams we thought would finish. And the Arizona State just clubbed Wyoming. So the bottom of the league, I thought was pretty impressive. I don't know what your biggest takeaway is from the week in the Big 12, but there's some overview of the league from me.
Yeah, I'll do a quick overview too, and kind of use my Big 12 power rankings I just sent to Mason as a template to
give me these.
I still one. I had Oklahoma State last week, so I'm sticking there with Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Cole, of course, does not show up when Oklahoma State just pounds South Dakota State.
Yeah,
they were 29 straight back-to-back FCS championships, and then had the gall to come into our group text and be like, well, they moved down 4 spots in Kelly Ford's rankings this week. So I direct messaged Kelly Ford and was like, hey, just curious, like what happened here? And he gave me this nice long explanation. Great guy. But he said basically there were so many teams that like overperformed what the model had predicted for them that it was just other teams around them moving up. I believe Cole also said Oklahoma State was like the biggest mover in the top 25 on the way down. They were not. Somebody moved down 7. I'm trying to remember who that was. Clemson, maybe.
That makes sense.
So that was not actually true. But I got a follow-up explanation there. There was not anything Oklahoma State did playing poorly. I mean, like Alan Bowman had a great day. Their offense looked really good. All he
I will say some questions popped up for me about their defense. Their secondary is not as good as I was hoping it would be. I know that their front seven's probably going to be fine. I worry about their pass defense a little bit there.
Yeah, they gave up some big plays.
Utah number 2, and I had K-State ahead of Utah going into the week, so that's a little bit of a change. They were cleaner than K-State. That's all. K-State 3. I don't think there's a reason to panic or drop them too much, so I just have K-State at 3. This is a move up for me, I think, a couple different spots. 4 is Arizona. Now, their defense, that's a little scary for getting kind of gashed by New Mexico.
Boy.
When you could throw it to Tetairoa McMillan at any point and get a touchdown, that's a pretty nice weapon to have. So we'll see moving forward. That offense is not sustainable, obviously, against New Mexico. It's still going to be pretty good. But what they did against New Mexico will not always work in the Big 12. And if their defense doesn't get any better, then they're going to run into problems. But for now, I think they are deserving of moving up because they were a touch more impressive than the other teams that I jumped them over. One being Kansas at 5. I don't think Kansas moves really, but you just have Arizona ahead of Kansas now. So you can't really glean a whole lot from Kansas's performance against Lindenwood, much like K-State against UT Martin. 6 is a drop for me. Maybe I should have dropped them further, but I still have a instinct about them that I like moving forward, and that's Texas Tech. So I had them 4th, but now I still have them 6th. I did drop them, but not much.
Oh, boy. They gave up 500 yards of offense.
Yeah, I'm a little terrified, but I think it's fair for me to kind of not completely abandon it after 1 week when I had them 4th last week.
Well, the good news, I mean, they had a bad performance. Was that week 1 when they went to Wyoming last year, like early in the year, and they lost in overtime? This time, at least, I mean, they won. So
7, yeah, and then 7, UCF. I just thought, worried a little bit about QB play. It wasn't always great, despite the score. So I still have UCF 7. I still have Iowa State 8. I thought those two were not impressive, but not enough to like completely abandon and throw down the rankings. 9 kind of moved them up a little bit was Colorado. I think the end of game coaching is very, very bizarre, and that will lose them games this year. But they're better than the other teams that are below them, in my opinion, at this point. 10,
the Colorado performance, I thought that was basically exactly what I expected. That looked like a team that is really fun, that has perhaps the best player in the country in Travis Hunter.
Yep.
But the defense and in the trenches stuff, I still think they've got a ways to go. And I think
coaching
horrible. Yeah, and coach, like they seem to me to be about a 6-6, anywhere from 5-7 to 7-5. That's kind of
problem is like if your in-game coaching is a problem and you're going to be in a lot of one-score games, that's going to be a rough outcome probably more times than not. And that's my fear for Colorado going forward. Baylor's number 10. I don't hate on Baylor going in this year, a little bit higher on them than everyone else because I think DeQuan Finn raises their ceiling. Can't really draw anything from the performance, so I just kept them basically where they were. 11, West Virginia. I actually didn't drop West Virginia. I just kept them there because they did exactly what I thought they would, get blown out by Penn State. I think they're fine moving forward. They're defined fine, I guess, but I didn't think they were a bowl team to begin with, so I think 11th is fair.
Well, I mean, yeah, we got to talk about that. That was, if you're going big picture takeaways for the league, I mean, that hurt. That hurt.
Black eye,
because, I mean, dude, they got... Now,
to my own horn, but I called that going in.
Yeah, you did. I mean, they were totally outclassed. They just never had a moment.
They were.
Drew Aller had the fumble where there was that bizarre play in the first quarter where he fumbled, and it was like that was like the only exciting moment, and then they gave it right back by snapping the ball off the man in motion, and it was just they had nothing. Like Garrett Green seemed to have no feel for when to go, when to throw. All of it was disappointing from West Virginia. And then you mix in like a weather delay, and it was just like it had to be the most miserable day for them. You giving up the touchdown before half. I know it looked like offensive pass interference potentially there, but how is that a situation where it's a one-on-one opportunity 50 yards down the field in that scenario?
At the end of the half. And also don't complain about the refs if you're West Virginia because like there was that spot that was terrible that didn't get overviewed like a minute before that too, right? When Penn State...
Also, just what did you see during the game in terms of how things were going, mano a mano, that would make you think that even if one or two of those calls went the other way, that West Virginia was going to make the plays that would still be required to get over the hump. There is nothing that I saw that made me feel like that. And you don't get many opportunities like that if you're the Big 12. The other, I guess, Oklahoma State playing Arkansas if Arkansas were to somehow have a great season, maybe that game that's coming up this weekend will mean something for the league. But the only other one really that you have is UTF going to Florida, and nobody is going to think anything of beating Florida after what they did week 1, losing to Miami and the schedule that they have coming up. So the league just doesn't get many opportunities for respect, and West Virginia completely laid an egg there.
Yep. West Virginia was as rough as I thought they would be. Penn State better than usual, too. Andy Kotelnicki's going to have Penn State. They're going to be a pain in the butt this year for the Big Ten because Ohio State, you don't know what you have at quarterback. Ryan Day with all that pressure, they looked kind of in the first half against Akron. Michigan, new coach, new QB who's a walk-on, and their offense looks right. Oregon, like Penn State. I told people before the season, everyone was like, Penn State. I was like, by process of elimination and default and adding Andy Kotelnicki, they are going to be a threat. And I think that's very true. But yeah, anyways, back to the rankings. I have TCU at 12. I didn't like them going in, and nothing really happened week 1 for me to change that. So 13, Arizona State. That's up from last. They were the best out of the teams that I think are bad. So 14, BYU. I think it's just, they're BYU. It's kind of where you are right now. 15, Cincinnati. Nothing. What you do against Towson's not going to make me come off too much. And 16 is Houston, by far the worst performance of anyone in the Big 12. I didn't think they were last going into the week because I thought, hey, Willie Fritz will help them out. But regardless of how good Willie Fritz is, they are a mile away from being close.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's too much wrong with those power rankings. I might be a bit higher on TCU. They made a lot of mistakes. They were sloppy, but Josh Hoover threw for like 350 yards.
Yeah, I'm a Hoover hater, but I got to see more.
Yeah, he's got like 6 games now in the last 2 years over 300 yards passing. Like
also, that's kind of because you're throwing it like 50 times because you're losing or in tight games.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's something to that, but he can sling it. Like, he's got a live arm. And he's still pretty young. I
think the way you feel about TCU is the way I feel about Baylor. Like, I'm like, watch out for Baylor. Yeah.
I think DeQuan Finn threw a couple of picks on Saturday
against Tarleton State. So, I didn't really see the game, but I saw the score. I was like, yeah, they're what I thought they were.
Yeah, I think he had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So, I mean, we'll see. But all in all, I mean, Baylor was up 28-0 at halftime. They really rolled there. So, yeah, fair enough. That was week 1. I would be with you in not really changing K-State's standing much in terms of where they're at in the league. I didn't have them in the top 2 because I think there will be some kinks that need to be worked out here throughout the year, and I think we saw that in week 1. But there is still a lot of good, a lot to build on, and we'll have an interesting one to talk about this week with K-State going back down to New Orleans for the first time since the Sugar Bowl, this time to play at Tulane. So we appreciate all of our great sponsors, Holiday Distillery, Home Field Apparel, Mint Mobile, Elenco. Thank you to Nick Springer behind the scenes for making everything happen. For Derek Young, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to another edition of 3 Maw.